There they are, by the way, the April jobs report. 20.5 million jobs lost and the unemployment rate at 14.7. Also with us, director of the National Economic Council under both President Obama and President Clinton, Gene Sperling. He's the author of the new book entitled Economic Dignity, that argues why in a time of crisis like we are currently in, the promotion of dignity should be the singular goal to measure America's economic future. These numbers, Joe, are painful. Well, and just absolutely devastating to millions and millions of Americans. Steve Rattner, a 14.7% unemployment rate since the Department of Labor has begun measuring these numbers in 1948. There's never been a number this high, obviously the highest number since the Great Depression, and many people believe it still could sink low, go higher. Jobless rate could go into the 20s. What are your initial reactions to these numbers?
Joe, they're absolutely devastating. Of course, they are what we expected, essentially, roughly in line. We didn't really know. This is unprecedented, as you said, but they're roughly in line with what we expected, but nothing like anything, as you also said, that we've ever seen before in our lifetime. And it will get worse. You saw yesterday the new claims for unemployment insurance were 3 million. Those numbers aren't even in this yet. This survey is taken in the middle of the month. So the job losses in the rest of April and in May aren't even counted yet. So it's absolutely going to get worse. And it's also probably undercounting some things. We haven't seen all the details yet, but you're probably going to see a drop in labor force participation, which means there are even more people unemployed than show up in these numbers. You're going to probably see a decline in hours worked, which means people are just simply getting less overtime, less time at their jobs, making less money. And of course, what we talked a little bit about yesterday, it's going to have a hugely disproportionate effect on people at the lower end of the income scales, the fast food workers, the hospitality workers, the hotel housekeepers, people like that. People like you and me are doing fine, but it's the people at the bottom who are really suffering from this. And you're seeing it also in non-economic ways. You're seeing it in terms of mental anxiety, domestic violence. This is really permeating our society, and it's going to be with us for a long time. This is not going to bounce back. This is not going to be a V where people suddenly go back to work. We're going to have double-digit unemployment on Election Day this year. We're going to have high unemployment really as far as the eye can see, in my view.
And Willie, these numbers, you look at it, 20.5 million jobs lost. I think back to my father losing his job when I was 8, 9 years old because of a recession. And just for him, how difficult it was for him. We went around the South looking for a job that could replace that job for over a year. I mean, every one of these numbers is a personal tragedy for those Americans who are out of work. And the problem is there are no easy answers right now. 1/3 of Americans say, hey, let's rush back into work. The real fear is, and you talk to small business owners and like your friends and my friends, they'll say if you rush back too quickly, then you cause another surge, because we're in the middle of a surge right now, and then that causes the businesses to shut down again. And a lot of small business owners I know say, listen, I may be able to survive this first shutdown. I will not be able to survive a second. So there are no easy answers.
No, this number is made no less devastating by the fact that we knew it was coming, but you see it now officially. 20.5 million of our friends and our neighbors and our fellow Americans. This is not a political question. This is not a political debate right now. This is about families who've lost jobs, families who will be worried about losing their homes, families who are now looking for meals, families who are counting on food banks around this country to help them get through the week. This is utter economic and personal devastation for many Americans. And Gene, I would turn to you as we look at this number. It could be worse next month. We'll see what it looks like. But 20.5 million Americans, 14.7 is the unemployment number here. That is the worst since the end of the Depression in 1939.
And, you know, as Steve said, it may not be worse. It's worse. And, you know, when we put out the unemployment numbers now, there's another number they put out called U6. And I know it sounds like Bono started a new band, but what it really is it's the report that looks at the amount of distress, how many people lost their job or can't find jobs, just dropped out in the last couple of weeks, and that's at 22.8%. And when you're talking about 22.8%, you really are talking about the type of pain we haven't seen since 1931. You know, it is going to get worse in May. There were probably people who did not answer the questions right. And so you're going to have to make not only getting these jobs back the most top priority, which, as was said earlier, has to be done with seriousness and confidence that not just gives confidence to that small businesses to reopen, but gives that us as consumers the confidence that it's not dangerous to go back, and that if we tried once, we should never do it again. And I hate to say this, but we're going to have to realize that because of this pathetically slow and ineffective response coming from this president, coming from Washington, coming from the failure of the small business loans, we're going to lose jobs that are not coming back. And so we're going to have big priorities in the next year or two. We're going to have to not only have a smart healthcare plan that's science-based, that brings confidence, brings people back to work. We're going to have to start thinking about what we do as a country to create the new jobs of the future, to help restore the jobs that we can already see are going to be lost forever.
So, Steve Rattner, what you said before that you don't think this is going to be a V-shaped recovery. This is what we had heard at the beginning of this crisis, that things would go down, we would shut down for 2 or 3 months, socially distanced, and everything would jump back up. You say, and other economists that I talk to tell me the same thing, it's just not going to happen that way, that it's going to be more like a U. We're going to have to struggle through this for a while. Tell me why that is.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely what I believe. I think it is not going to just jump back. I think there are any number of ways you can think about this. Are people going to travel the way they traveled before? I don't think so. Are people going to have the money to make the same discretionary kind of big purchases that they like to make when things are going well? I don't think so. Are people going to go to theme parks in Florida in the same numbers they did before? I don't think so. And so, and as I talk to CEOs of companies, and as we go about our investing business, what CEOs tell us over and over again is that they're not going to simply rehire everybody that they got rid of, that they're rethinking their businesses, they're cutting their capital expenditures, they're bracing themselves for a long recovery. And so there is going to be, as Gene said, a fair amount of permanent job destruction here that is somehow going to have to be replaced by new government policies, by new initiatives, by other ways of thinking about this. I would also be remiss if I didn't say that not all of this had to happen. Obviously, the virus was a huge public health crisis. It was going to have an economic impact. But I think it almost goes without saying at this point that if we had addressed it earlier, if we had more coordinated national policies, if we had addressed testing, we could have a number of these effects, gotten people back to work sooner, and had much less economic damage than we're going to have because of the way our response to this virus has been implemented, which is not very well at all.
So, Steve, we're calling this a recession at this point. At what point do all the equations, the jobs, the claims, the shutdowns add up to a depression? At what point do we cross over that line? And what do those two different terms mean for the length, extent of the pain that Americans are going to feel?
The classic definition of a recession is 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. We've already had one. We're certainly going to have another. We are in a recession. There's no doubt we're in a recession. When the economists get around to dating it, they'll probably date it back to March or some period like that. The classic definition of a depression is 4 quarters of negative economic growth. I don't think that's yet what we believe will happen, but it's entirely possible that could happen. We're obviously in utterly uncharted waters here in terms of the magnitude and the speed of these job losses. It is certainly fair to say that a number of them will come back. Companies will rehire when they can reopen. So I don't think we're necessarily in the Great Depression, as it were. And that was, of course, a time when we made everything as bad as we could by bad economic policies. Our policies are a bit better this time. So I think it's too soon to say depression. Absolutely major recession, one that's going to go on in terms of joblessness for years and years. We're going to be talking about bringing unemployment down for several years now before we're ever going to get back to anything that looks like full employment in this country.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.